Okay, you're all set.
Great. Good morning. You're here with the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. I am State Senator Mark Lawrence from Southern York County, towns of Kittery, Elliott, South Berwick, half of Berwick, York, and Ogunquit. I'm the Senate Chair of the committee. Today, we'll be conducting work sessions and language reviews, and we are winding down to complete all our business before our committee over the next few meetings. So we'll be focusing on getting bills out of committee. We also have a presentation this morning by the PUC. So what my plan is today is to work the committee probably till about 10:30, quarter of 11, take our morning break and set aside what we have left to do so that when we come back, we can deal immediately with the PUC and then finish up the rest of our work for the rest of the day. We have 2 work sessions on today that appear on the public listing. We also have another bill coming back that I think we're ready to complete. And we also have several language reviews to go over. So a lot of work to do today. And I'll just ask committee members to introduce themselves, and I'll start off with Representative Berry.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Seth Berry. I represent House District 55, Bowdoin, Bodenham, most of Richmond, and Swan Island on the Kennebec.
Okay, and while we're doing introductions, I don't see Senator Stewart on. Nate or Steve, could you get in touch with him? Because he had requested that we do his bill first. So he may have difficulty logging on or something, but just give us a status update.
I'll message him right now.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll ask Representative Ziegler to introduce himself.
Good morning. You did that because I just lifted my cup up. I'm Representative Paige Ziegler from District 96 in Waldo County. There are 7 towns: Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Morrow, Palermo, and Searsmont.
Great. Let me see who else has their coffee cup just coming up that I can introduce. Representative Sachs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie Sachs. I'm proud to represent House District 48, which is Freeport and Park Pownell. I'd like to offer my apologies that I will be popping out shortly for to have a bill hearing in another committee, but we'll be returning shortly. Thank you.
Great. Representative Carlo.
Good morning, Senator and colleagues on the Energy Committee. I'm Nathan Carlo. I represent House District 16, which is part of my hometown of Buxton, part of Saco and all of Hollis. Likewise, with Representative Sachs, I too will have a work session that I'll need to be popping out sometime between 9:30 and 3 o'clock. So whenever they decide to take it up.
Representative Foster.
Good morning. I'm Steve Foster, representing District 104, which includes the 5 towns of Dexter, Garland, Stetson, Exeter, and Charleston.
Representative Kessler.
Good morning. I'm Chris Kessler, representing part of South Portland and a little smidgen of Cape Elizabeth. And I'm not going anywhere today. So,
Representative Grohowski.
Good morning, Nicole Grohowski. I represent House District 132, City of Ellsworth, Town of Trenton, and I think I'm going to be here, but you never know.
Representative Wadsworth.
Good morning, everybody. Nate Wadsworth, House District 70, Southern Oxford County.
And Senator Stewart.
Morning, folks. I'm Trey Stewart, State Senator in District 2, which is 51 communities in Aroostook and Penobscot counties, and I reside in Presque Isle.
Great. And just for people in the attendees, so you kind of know our, sorry, little technical difficulty there. So you kind of know our schedule today. We're going to deal with Senator Stewart's bill first, and then we have 2 water or sewer district bills. One is St. Francis and one is Caribou. I think we're ready for a report back on St. Francis. I think they're working out language, and we just need to begin to go over that and to vote it. And we also have Caribou to work. And it's a good segue to talk about members will be coming in and out. That's not any disrespect to the legislation or the people who are interested in the legislation. It's just we all serve on multiple committees and have bills to present at the end of the session. And obviously, leadership wants us to get our work done as soon as possible so we can finish up this session. So there's pressure on in each committees for legislators to go back to other committees and work on their bills to get them out. So that's kind of why people are jumping in and out. And just a suggestion, and I'm sure Representative Berry will appreciate my mentioning this. He and I are often occupied in the 10 to 15 minutes before hearings in getting things set up, talking to Lindsay, talking to Jason. So if you could limit your text to us and try to get in touch with us, unless there's something critical that we need to know before the hearing, because it takes us a certain amount of time to get this all technically set up. And with that, I'll ask our analyst to introduce herself and our committee clerk as well.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Lax, the legislative analyst with the Nonpartisan Office of Policy and Legal Analysis.
Great. And Lindsay is very involved in work sessions, so you will see her a lot on this Zoom. And then we have our committee clerk. Jason, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jason Allarding, the Energy, Utility, and Technology Committee Clerk.
Great. And you'll probably see Jason more in public hearings because that's where his role is most active in public hearings, less in work sessions, but when we do vote, he will be the person taking the vote. So with that, I'm going to lay before the committee. Actually, we don't need a vote to go into work session, Lindsay, correct? Because we advertised it.
You can just go into work session, yes.
Yep. Okay, so we'll go directly into work session and we'll begin working Senator Stewart's bill. Have you done reported your analysis on this bill previously, Lindsay, or did Deirdre?
I know this will be the first time.
Okay, so why don't we begin with your analysis and present to the committee. Then we'll have questions for Lindsay to go over the analysis, and then we'll begin hearing from anyone we ask to report back during the public hearing, and then we'll begin working the bill at that point. So Lindsay, go ahead.
Excellent. All right, I just sent out my bill analysis by email, so you should have that in your inbox as well as the sponsor's amendment. So if you bear with me one moment, I will share my screen. Okay, please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, yes. That looks good, Lindsay.
Excellent. All right. So we are looking at LD 1107, an act to create needed broadband infrastructure in rural Maine through the establishment of a satellite-based broadband grant program. This bill had a public hearing on April 6th, 2021. This was a carryover. As I mentioned, the sponsor has an amendment that went out this morning, so this is not reflected in my analysis, but I'll walk through the bill as originally drafted, and then if the committee would like, or Senator Stewart would like, I can walk through the amendment. So the bill establishes a broadband grant program administered by the Public Utilities Commission to provide grants of up to $500 to individuals for installation costs and other advanced costs associated with the initial acquisition of broadband access from satellite-based broadband providers. Under the program, grant priority is given to applicants from unserved or underserved areas of the state. The Connect Maine Authority is required to assist the Public Utilities Commission by providing information and assistance as needed, and the PUC may adopt routine technical rules to implement the program. So we heard from individuals at the public hearing in April. In support, the bill would broaden broadband access for unserved and underserved areas. And satellite is less costly than fiber service, and the technology is developing. In opposition, the bill does not include means testing and does not prioritize unserved areas. And there were concerns that satellite-based internet providers may not meet the broadband definition established by the FCC, and some technology is still in development and may not be commercially available. From the testimony at the hearing, a couple of notes. There was some concern about whether the Public Utilities Commission has the means to process these applications and handle the distribution of funds. And a question came up whether the subsidy would be available for ongoing leasing fees for equipment or just upfront costs. We don't have a fiscal impact statement yet, but the grant is capitalized through a one-time general fund appropriation of $1 million. And that is what I have. So let me switch over to the amendment. Would
Yep,
the
if you
committee
could
like?
go ahead with that, Lindsay, that would probably expedite things.
Okay, excellent. So Senator Stewart's amendment changes the sort of nature of the program. So this is, the bills originally drafted was specific satellite technology. And the amendment changes basically allows the funding to go for broadband access generally. So because it changes the title to Residential Broadband Grant Program, removes the references to specific satellite technology. So you'll see those changes throughout. The bill also creates a definition for inadequately served areas. So this encompasses areas which are unserved or underserved as defined within this section. So that would be 25 megabits per second download and 3 megabits per second upload speeds. So the purpose of the fund basically incorporates that definition. So the fund is established to provide access to broadband services, particularly in inadequately served areas, through broadband access from a broadband provider. So again, removing the satellite-based technology focus. Scrolling down, the amendment also requires that an applicant provide information regarding the location of the residential household to acquire broadband access. And so striking the language that specified that it had to be satellite-based, incorporating the new definition of inadequately served, and then just updating some terminology. So that is the amendment. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions for me.
Great, Lindsay, I appreciate that. And refresh my memory, did we have anybody we asked for information to report back on this bill?
We did not in connection with this bill, no.
Okay, so I think what I'll do is go to Senator Stewart first and see if he has any additional information about his amendment. And then we can have questions for Senator Stewart on his amendment. Senator Stewart?
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Lindsay, for your analysis and your help pulling that amendment together. So since the amendment became public, my phone has been pinging. And the only bit of feedback that I have, I guess, is where the administration of the program should lie. And of course, at the time of this bill being originally put forward, we had looked at the PUC, but with the main connectivity authority and that new entity that's formed, I think that would be a better home for it at this point. And that's been the consensus, at least of the folks that have reached out so far this morning about it. I think it would be helpful to hear from Andrew Butcher at some point on this, just to confirm that he is going to have the bandwidth, no pun intended, if we do decide to put it over there. I mean, the long and short of it, to not reopen the issue, but the long and short of it is that we want to make sure that folks that live, particularly in rural areas, are, not going to be overlooked as we expand in broadband and, can access some form of monies to do a direct connection right to their home. And so there's a lot of work going on. I know Andrew and his team are working on that issue right now. And I think this would probably be a good tool in their tool belt for them. We can also talk about the money piece. I don't know if $1 million is the right number or not, but that's the starting point for this bill. And certainly there's a lot of money flying around right now in regards to broadband, so we can litigate that issue as well here today. So with that, I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, if anybody has anything they want to pick up.
So questions for Senator Stewart. Representative Berry.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. I appreciate seeing the amendment that was sent out today, and I don't see Mr. Butcher among the attendees. I do see Peggy Schaefer, the head of Connect Main Authority, with us. There was an effort to discuss this bill with you in the broadband caucus, and I think the broadband caucus has been very interested in hearing about this, but hasn't had the chance to discuss this new amendment either. So I'm scrambling a little bit to understand kind of how this would be substantially different. Do you, I'm having trouble thinking of technologies besides Starlink that would likely take advantage of this program. Do you have anything to share with us on that? I mean, even with the amendment, I don't, you know, there a connection can be in the thousands. You know, I think we could hear from Director Schaefer about that. You know, for an individual, as opposed to community efforts, which can really bring the cost down. So I'm just trying to understand the logic of an individual grant versus a more community-wide effort that can really bring a ripple effect and benefits to all. Can you
Trey?
Yeah,
Trey, go ahead.
Thanks. And in regards to the broadband caucus, I have been invited to participate, and I've told the folks that have been inviting me that they did so on an evening when I have class. And so I was unable to attend, and I was hoping that that was shared with the group. It wasn't as if I was sort of skirting them. I told them time and again, that time does not work for me. I'm more than happy to talk with the group, but that's not going to work, at least with my schedule. So, appreciate your work over in that body and whatnot, but that's what happened there. I think that if you talk to some of the folks that are doing some of this work, from others, it could be Consolidated, could be Spectrum, I don't think that you're going to see that there's any pushback in that regard, because of the fact that it is technology neutral and that there are still going to be some other costs associated with doing certain things. And you're right, in those communities where they are actively working on a community-based program, that's great. But what I'm talking about are small towns like Lowell, small towns like, you know, look at the 51 that I have and I represent, right? Many of them are not going to have community-based projects, right? And so for them, there's no community-based option in a lot of cases. And those are the ones, when we talk about last mile, we're really talking last mile, right? and without some sort of ability to access something, they're going to continue to fall behind and to suffer both financially and in terms of access. So I think too, it's important to keep in mind that in this space, the technology is going to continue to develop at an incredibly fast pace. And as that happens, we need to make sure that you know, whatever we've decided to do as government is able to adapt to those changes and to incorporate them to the best of our ability as well. So I think that's the reason for the more neutral language in this amendment, that I believe that there are going to be some other technologies coming out and talking with some of the other providers, and that was their sort of concern, that they wanted to make sure that you know, whatever we do in this session doesn't prevent them from doing something months from now down the road.
Great. Any other questions for Senator Stewart? Representative Berry?
thank you. I believe that Peggy Schaefer is able to join us only for the next 3 minutes. So I would request that she be brought in so we can just hear from her very briefly before she needs to go.
Okay, we'll bring Peggy in for 3 minutes and then go back to questions for Senator Stewart. Can you beam her across, Jason?
Yes, she should be on her way over.
Peggy, are you there?
Joining us from Washington, D.C., I think. No, there's a conference going on of some kind.
Peggy, are you there?
And
Okay,
she,
there she is. Okay, thank you, Seth. I can handle it.
Okay.
Peggy, go ahead.
Sorry, I have a map open, so I have a very bad internet connection this morning because my upspeed can't do maps in Zoom. So, this is, you're talking about with $1 million, talking about 2,000 individual grants. I think if you are in an unserved area, getting $500 to get, can you hear me? Getting $500 to get the service that's not available isn't really that helpful, right? I mean, if there's no service on your road, you're not going to get it to your house. So I think that's a consideration. I think that there is absolutely a capacity consideration. We are getting, Andrew and I just came back from a 2-day session with NTIA about the money coming our direction. It requires, this is federal money, so it requires like a lot of work. And so, as you know, MCA right now is staffing up, but there's still just 2 people working there. One just started this week. We still have 2 people. So there is a capacity issue about putting out 2,000 grants. If you're going to do this, you do need a means test. You really do need a means test. You want to make sure that the people who are getting this money really could not afford to pay the $500 themselves to get connected. And I think if you are unconnected right now, this would be, in fact, full satellite service because you would not get another connection. So I just got the amendment this morning. I'm a little, I got in at like midnight last night, so I'm a little not as organized this morning as I'd like to be. Sorry.
That's fine, Peggy. Are there questions for Peggy? You have about 2 or 3 minutes with us.
Yeah, I have a 9:30 to talk with the press about somebody with a $68,000 connection to cable.
Okay, so let's try to keep our questions very specific and very brief to Peggy. So are there questions for Peggy? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Shaver, for your brief appearance with us this morning. If this bill were worded such that it would require or recommend to the authority that they consider other options, including satellite, when providing access to broadband, and with the $1 million, let's call it set aside, wasn't in there, with those conditions, my question is framed with those conditions, would the authority then be able to fund something like this?
We can already fund it. We do not need language to fund something like this. We do not. If it fits in the federal, if it's going to be federal money and it fits within the federal guidelines, we could fund something like this as we move forward. We wouldn't need any language.
Representative Foster, any follow-up question? Is that a shaking of the head? You're all set. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ms. Schaefer, for being here. In regards to a means test, we did something similar in the last legislature with regard to the direct payments to folks, the $250 odd that were sent out. And I believe that was simply an income-based test. Would something like that suffice in this instance if you just said, provide proof of income based on your previous year's taxes? And if it's below a certain.
So here's the thing, right? I mean, this is federal. There is an accounting piece around it. I'm a little worried about the amount of work that this is going to take, right? There's an accounting piece to this. And so I'm a little worried about the amount of time and effort and staff work it's going to take to manage a grant for 2,000 people where you're checking income, you're checking a whole variety of things. I'm sorry to be a little short, but that's a significant concern to us. Is that we have limited staff. We're trying to staff up. This isn't this individual type program is not. It would take a lot of work to verify, to look back, to track, to make sure the money went out, and that's a concern.
So Peggy, you have to step off now. Is that correct?
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
So as you step off, one quick thing to think about is would it be helpful from the committee to ask you or Andrew to report back to us for the next legislature around the feasibility of doing an individual based
Yeah,
program.
I know MCA is one of the things that's on their list to look at is what we're referring to as line extensions, which this sort of is. And so there's a whole, we are the federal requirements are not out yet for many of these programs. So we're trying to figure out how this stuff all fits together. So if you wanted us to do a short report back for next session about whether this is a feasible activity that MCA is going to would consider or can do within the federal funds, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, good. If you
you.
have the chance to jump back on after your press conference, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll go back to questions for Senator Stewart regarding this bill only. So I don't see any questions. Trey, my question is, this is such a dynamic area and it's changed so much, even since you introduced the bill last year, which, has many interesting concepts. And you're kind of focusing in on, since a lot of our work has been based upon community-based projects, and you're focusing on meeting individual needs where community-based projects don't really work. And there's a lot more money available now. Are you flexible to try to figure out a way that we can look at this and see if there's a way to have an individual-based program that accesses currently existing money that can provide this type of access in those rural areas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think in hearing from Ms. Schaefer, it sounds like they have the sort of wherewithal to pull something like this together. And it sounds like the money is there and that they could do some sort of individualized program like this. There are, and my phone in the meantime has been pinging with other folks that are listening in. One of your co-chair asked the question, what are the other possibilities that you could use this money for? And line extensions is the big one that these other providers are interested in using it for. So, so I think there is a there, right? There is a point to this. And there are folks in my district that, and I'm sure many others on this committee as well, that are going to continue to go with either no service or very bad service. And that I think it's certainly within the purview of this committee to try to do something about that. Now, what form that exactly takes, how prescriptive it is, I'm certainly open to considering all those things and working with you folks to come up with a way to make something work here.
Good. Other questions for Trey? Representative Foster?
I guess a question and a comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. The question would be that would the bill sponsor be okay with dropping the $1 million piece of this? In other words, as Ms. Schaefer responded, they have the money available to respond to opportunities that the bill would ask them to look at. So I'd ask that question first.
Yes.
Trey, you're comfortable with that?
That's fine by me. Yep.
Okay. And then you wanted to make a comment, Steve, on the bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I got to be quite frank here. I'm quite disappointed in what the Connect Maine Authority has put forward for answers to questions and their comments on this in this area. For instance, when we discussed this previously, Mr. Butcher alluded to the fact that some of the Starlink satellites had, I think his words were, blown up, and that it was not a true tried and true technology yet. However, I think that's a red herring. I've talked to people who have high-speed internet fiber broadband available who have switched over to this service because it's providing them more reliable and a faster service than what they had from their cable. And also, I still raise my concern. I've never been able to get an answer in my 4 years now on this committee from Connect Maine or the Connect Maine Authority on what is the limit that they will authorize to spend on the last mile of cable that they will put up. Now, numbers originally I heard on this committee were $22,000 a mile for that service. Now, since then, I've learned that the industry itself is probably down to around $10,000 in some cases anyway. But still, for one or two people that are at the end of the road, and I will remind us all that the governor has committed that everybody will have high-speed internet connectivity by 2024, it would seem quite reasonable that we would expend $500 for those one or two households to take advantage of this service rather than spend the money necessary to provide them with high-speed broadband through fiber. I don't understand why this is, but I would strongly consider either modifying this bill so that it basically requires that the Connect Maine Authority consider this as they expand to every citizen in the state of Maine having connectivity. The other thing I will mention is when I have high-speed internet going by my house and now have my phone through that. When I lost service, I no longer had phone. However, if you've heard the recent news reports, through Starlink, people in Ukraine were able to revive their phone service, if you will, through that entity once their local phone cell service was shut down. And, you know, there are a lot of advantages that especially the sporting camp that's up in the woods that runs off from solar or generator power, or, you know, my constituent that lives a half a mile down a country lane could take advantage of. And I just think that to get the most people connected for the dollars, I think that it's got to be something that is looked at. And quite frankly, it doesn't look to me, for whatever reason, that Connect Maine Authority even wants to consider it. So to me, that's what this bill really needs to do, is make sure that they do, and they use these basically what are taxpayer and ratepayer funds as wisely as possible, and to get as many people connected for as the lowest amount of money possible. So that's where I'm at with this bill. I can understand it. It probably needs to be modified to do what I've suggested, and also what Ms. Shaver suggested. So thank you for the opportunity.
So let's go back to any technical questions for Trey before we get into our kind of debate or discussion. So any technical questions? So I'll weigh in on the debate or discussion. I, am in agreement with many of the sentiments that both Trey and Representative Foster have suggested, is that we've got to look for ways to reach those remote areas. And I've talked about that on this committee before, because I'd hate to see us, put our priority on the 98% and forget the 2% that's out there extremely remote. My thought is, and I would encourage Trey not to think about looking for funding for this, because frankly, I just don't think it's going to happen. But what I'd like to see us discuss is having some kind of policy statement directed to, the Maine Connectivity Authority and then all the people who are accessing this federal money, that they explore individual based programs and have it focused on, have it consider, alternative ways to putting in more additional lines. And I don't know exactly what that language would look like, but I think we have a chance here to have the legislature state a policy to give some direction to, how we want to see broadband expanded in the state of Maine. I'll open it up to other thoughts on the committee. Representative Grahowski.
Thanks. Yeah, I just had a question for Senator Stewart. I was wondering, it sounds like Connect Maine Authority maybe didn't know about this language, and Mr. Butcher isn't here, but did you maybe consult with him at all? Because I feel like he had more, in our confirmation hearing with him, he had what I thought were very thoughtful comments about the integration of these technologies. And just also wondering more broadly, like who, if anyone, did you work with to amend this bill?
Trey, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Representative, for the questions. So I just sent Andrew an email and unfortunately he's tied up. So that's why he's not able to be here this morning. Otherwise he would be, but you're right that the takeaway from what I've gathered in my conversations with him, both in this committee and offline, we've spoken and talked about this exact scenario and how it might work. And I believe that he gets it. You know, his response was much more positive around this idea than Ms. Schaefer's was a minute ago, that, you know, we should be trying to find ways to, you know, reach those folks at the end of the mile. And sometimes it's many miles. So I feel confident in his ability to do that. Again, the folks that are weighing in now are the other providers who, you know, the consolidated, the spectrums and whatnot, that are, the feedback was, at least from this morning and from the PUC from this morning, was, you know, the only tweak you're going to want to consider is where is this going to live? But if we're taking the money piece out, it probably doesn't matter much anyway, because at that point we could just, I mean, I think where you're sort of heading with this, Mr. Chair, is maybe we change it from a bill that's got money associated with it and creates a new program to just a resolve that just says, you know, please, as main connectivity authority is working through this work, please consider technologies that'll address those last mile or end of the mile needs in whatever you're doing with all of the money that you've got at your disposal at this point, rather than something like a bill that's more prescriptive in nature and is going to sort of put too many parameters around a program. Is that, am I picking up what you're putting down?
Yeah, and I think my perspective, and everybody on the committee has their own individual perspectives, but my perspective is we can in fact be a little bit stronger than that, and, you know, direct them to explore this, that type of thing, and have a report back to us, but also allow them to implement the program if they can do one in the interim. I think what we're facing here is, my sense is that they have a huge amount of money coming in. They're trying to shape how they're doing this, and they may not be as interested in this as we are on a committee type of thing. And I think we need to give them some kind of direction on what our priorities are on broadband. They're an administrative agency. They have, you know, their own focus and how they think they're going to get it done. But I think we got to give them some kind of clear indication on the types of things we want to see included or explored. Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, I've been looking at the main connectivity authorities documentation as to what their strategic objectives are as they move forward with their work over the next year. And reaching the last mile is one of their main strategic objectives. And everything that's within this list seems to fit the bill of what Senator Stewart is looking to accomplish. I think that it is already within their purview, and I'm very confident that they're looking at satellite-based access as a last mile option, and that people in rural Maine in that last mile are definitely a priority. And so I really just don't see the need for this bill. So I'm going to be voting against the bill and would like to motion not to pass.
Okay, we have a motion ought not to pass. Is there a second? I don't hear a second, so the motion fails for lack of a second. We'll continue on with debate or discussion. So just to kind of Oh, I'm sorry. I have a couple other people. So let me go back to Representative Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am, first of all, I just want to appreciate Senator Stewart, what you're trying to do here. I do think that there will be a need for this kind of solution at the very, in the very most remote regions. I think when we talk of last mile, generally speaking, we're talking about solutions that are reachable with fiber, but there's no question that rural camps way out in the woods are not reachable by fiber. And there's been a lot of discussion of this in the broadband caucus, and I apologize that our meetings, which are usually on Wednesdays or Thursdays, aren't a good time for you. So thank you for that update. I do agree that the Maine Connectivity Authority has this within its purview. I think that Mr. Butcher's remarks, support that. So I wouldn't have a problem with getting a report back from them on kind of the status of this, low Earth orbit satellite or other wireless solutions, and including certainly line extensions. I think line extensions is definitely a part of their overall effort right now as well. And then how does it integrate with federal programs? We have the used to be called the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. It now has a different name, which I always forget. It's the Affordable Connectivity Program. So that FCC benefit is interesting to me because it's income based. So if we did want to encourage the Connect Maine Authority or the Maine Connectivity Authority to look at a means tested program, which came up earlier, we could ask them to take a look at trying to create something that hinges off of that existing benefit, because why create a new mousetrap, right? We're trying to keep things efficient. So that might help to address some of the concern that we heard from Dr. Schaefer about administrative, duplication. And so I just want to throw that out as something that they could also look at for us. I'm very interested in maximizing the federal dollars and making sure that what we do invest in will really lift all boats. And I think that the part of what the Maine Connectivity Authority and Connect Maine is trying to figure out right now is, where do we get the best bang for our buck? What does that even mean, right? I mean, we did give them some really good guidance around that, I think, in LD 1484 last year, and they've done a ton of good work already in refining that and then improving those definitions and those standards. But I'm certainly open to looking at a directive and a report back to do some additional thinking around this. And again, there's no question in my mind that some of those very, very most remote areas, will require that we take advantage of this. The federal government has invested, I think, $885 million in Starlink. So, it would be a shame not to take advantage of it in some ways. But it does require fiber backhaul. So, fiber supports 5G. It supports, Starlink. It supports all of our wireless solutions. So I think we should all keep in mind that fiber backbone is really the veins and arteries. And what we're talking about here is the capillaries at most. So, thank you.
Great. And I think Skeet thinks he's the only Starlink that really is important in the world. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. First of all, obviously, Starlink is not the only satellite company providing high-speed internet. I think, at least from the research I've done, they probably provide the best or highest speed service, both up and down. Secondly, again, I didn't have a chance because of time limitations to follow up with Ms. Schaefer, but if there's a big hang up on the income or financial requirements for providing that opportunity, I would ask the question, and I'll leave it open-ended for anybody to consider as we think about what she said and what Representative Berry just alluded to. Are we considering, as we string cable up at tens of thousands of dollars per mile, what the income level is of the folks down at the end of that line? I don't think so. So to me, that is not really an issue. It's a matter of there's been a commitment made to get everyone connected, even at the end of the last mile. And one could add to that at whatever cost. And I think this is a viable option to try to get as many people connected as possible without spending some of those dollars that may be required to upgrade some of the more suburban rural communities in Maine. So I think that is I don't think that's something that really comes into play when we need to look at affordability. Thank you.
Any other debate or discussion? So where I'm coming from, and I understand what Representative Kessler is saying, is that he believes there's language already in there. I'm not comfortable that there's a priority being placed on this right now. And I think we need to have some kind of priority or some kind of statement of policy from the legislature on the priority for this. And it's easy when expanding broadband to go to those communities who are very well organized. They have a municipal infrastructure in place that can support it. They may have volunteers in the community, retired people who are able to do it. But there's a lot of communities in Maine are not like that. And you know, there's always going to be the Oxbow Plantation. There's always going to be those types of places that we're going to have to find alternatives to get to. And I think we need to be very sensitive to that. We can't just focus on the easy communities and easy communities to organize. So I'd like to see some kind of expression of encouraging or promoting an individualized program and to look at those types of communities. An additional direction to how these monies are spent. Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I share a link in the chat to the strategic planning document for the Maine Connectivity Authority?
Sure, if you want.
This is a question for Senator Stewart. I'm wondering if you can take a look at on page 3 of the strategic plan, number 3, evaluating alternatives strategy to provide connectivity for targeted locations. So they talk about establishing the methodologies for identifying extremely remote and identifying projects and partnerships to evaluate the lifetime costs and deployment time. If you would be amenable to just as a committee that we express that in their analysis of this part of their strategic plan that they look at satellite-based access as a part of that analysis. Would that be something that you would be okay with?
So I think what we're getting at, right, is that it's not even necessarily about satellite, right, but it's about the people behind it. And, you know, again, that was why, in fact, we made the amendment sort of technologically neutral, so that we weren't, you know, sort of pigeonholing ourselves to just say satellite if next month a new technology comes forward and it's something different. But I think it's the people behind it that we've got to put, you know, and their circumstance of where they live as more of a priority, as opposed to prioritizing a technology or including that specific technology in whatever, whatever we decide to do. I'm trying to, I guess, better understand it. Maybe rephrase your question if if that would be helpful.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Kessler?
So forgive the satellite piece. Rather than satellites, individual grant-based programs is really what we're aiming towards. It's really about providing direct grant funding to individuals rather than have it be a larger orchestrated thing. So would you be okay with a letter to the Maine Connectivity Authority expressing that they thoroughly analyze direct grants to consumers as their method of getting broadband to those extreme last miles?
I don't think a letter would be sort of exactly what we're looking for. I mean, I think you want something that's going to have some accountability behind it. And I just don't see a letter necessarily having that. But if you wanted to write one as your minority report, go right ahead. But I do think that the key is, right, as more meetings are had, as more planning is done, as more, maps are rolled out and the like, there are still people who don't have any access. And that as time goes on, between when we adjourn and we come back in January, they still don't have access. And we have done nothing to them for them except for send a letter and say, we support these people. Okay, well, let's do something that has some sort of teeth behind it then, so that over the next 8 months in the interim, they're not going with nothing, right? And that if there is a way that this new entity, the Maine Connectivity Authority could get something off the shelves and ready to go and out the door this year, then that ought to be not priority number 3, but priority number 1. So I think that needs to have a little more teeth to it.
Other debate or discussion? So go ahead, Representative Berry.
Thank you. So could someone just summarize, perhaps you, Senator Lawrence, or you, Senator Stewart, where you think you might be interested in going with the resolve approach? So a little more. We can just review what you have in mind.
And I don't think, Representative Berry, it's really clear in my mind yet. The issue I'm trying to address is, I think these organizations we have working on broadband have a focus, and they have a focus. And as you know, on this committee, we often deal with organizations, PUC, other organizations that kind of go in different directions or don't do the directions we think are important in policy. And I think it's important for us to give some direction to them. And we're constantly, I think Representative Kessler has had a few bills in directing the GEO or whoever, trying to do certain things. So I think we need some kind of policy statement. And I'd like to see Senator Stewart work on it with Andrew Butcher to see if we can reflect that whatever they're doing includes a look at individualized programs and directed at kind of these extremely rural and perhaps unorganized areas in the state of Maine, but it doesn't have to be that specific, but getting at those areas that when they did their report, I brought up in my questions, what about that person who lives 2 miles out in the woods? What about the sporting camp? What about all those different areas? That we have some kind of direction to them, that they look at exploring all, or find a way to address this. That's what I'm looking for. And I don't know if Senator Stewart is willing to go away and maybe sit down with Andrew Butcher quickly and see if we can come back with something to the committee that they're comfortable with, that you would think would reflect that policy, Senator Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, we've been emailing back and forth during this this hearing, and we're going to try to touch base next week and find time to sit down, and we may be able to do it sooner. Depending, Mr. Butcher's schedule is quite busy. I know that from trying to schedule times to meet with him in the past, but hopefully we can carve out at least a few minutes here and there between now and next week, and then we could have some language for you probably hopefully late next week if you're amenable to that.
I'm certainly amenable. And what I want to get is at the issue of in expanding broadband, it's not just the kind of communities that seem to have it together in knowing what they wanted to do ahead of this money, but figuring out, and you represent a lot of those communities that are kind of smaller, unorganized, maybe have 173 people in them, 371 people in them, trying to figure out solutions for people in those communities. That's kind of what I'm targeting at. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to table.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second? Shout out.
Second that.
Seconded by Representative Grochowski. Show of hands. All those in favor of tabling? I see 8 for tabling, and those against? One against tabling, so the motion prevails. And I just ask you, Senator Stewart, get back to us as soon as you can. I'd like to put this on first thing next week so we kind of know where it's going and if it's going to get any kind of momentum for support. Okay, let's go on to our next bill. Lindsay, is it logical to do the Caribou Water District first and then the St. Francis second?
Yes, Caribou Utilities District is a work session. St. Francis Water District is a language review. The committee already voted on that one.
Okay, so while we're still in work session, let's do the Caribou District first.
Gotcha. Okay. Bear with me one moment and I will send out. Okay, so I just sent out the bill analysis and I will share my screen and we will walk through it. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we are looking at LD 1949, an act to amend the Caribou Utilities District Charter to include broadband services. There was a public hearing on February 15th. So this bill amends the private and special laws governing the Caribou Utilities District. The district currently has authority to provide water and sewer services to the city of Caribou, but this bill would expand the district's purposes to include providing broadband services. Section 2 of the bill establishes the various provisions governing the district's provision of broadband services. So I'll walk through each one. It's got a definition section. The section 2 establishes the powers of the district, so they may obtain a detailed engineering or technical design for open access fiber optic network from a Caribou-based nonprofit. They may construct, operate, and maintain a network, apply for licenses and permits, own land, and construct facilities necessary for the provision of broadband services. They may enter into contracts associated with providing broadband services, and they may establish and administer a regional municipal utility district authorized to make provisions for broadband service, including establishing rates, collecting revenues, and all other actions necessary and appropriate for a regional municipal utility district. In terms of the development, after the completion of the detailed engineering or technical design, the district may contract to establish or expand the network and operate the network to provide services to the city of Caribou and other municipalities that are accepted as members. The district must hold all property acquired or developed in connection with its authority to provide broadband services, and it may have property assigned to it by other municipalities. The costs associated with the open access fiber optic network must be paid from development funds or by network user fees. The district may issue revenue bonds, seek grants and contributions, and dispose of property as needed for its operation. The district is responsible for the collection of payments in connection with the network, and the district shall determine the amount of revenue to retain as reserves. For the admission of new municipalities, another municipality may apply to receive broadband services from the district. And to do so, they have to submit documentation showing that the action is approved by the municipality's legislative body. They have to agree to pay 110% of the cost of extending and constructing the network as determined by the trustees, and select an appropriate start date for services that will allow it to meet its funding obligation. And the Board of Trustees may accept applications by majority vote at a public meeting. And then there's a process for a withdrawal of a municipality who's previously agreed to enter into this. We heard testimony at the public hearing. So I provide just an overview. The proponents pointed out that municipal entity status means they would be eligible for a broad range of grants available through Connect Maine and federal infrastructure funding, and the ability to borrow money at low rates. They say the district has experience, employee capacity, and existing relationships with vendors that will be helpful. The Caribou Utilities District operates its divisions without cross-subsidization currently. The district cannot hold utility customers hostage by requiring broadband participation, and they point out the reasons behind that. And the Caribou City Council unanimously voted to provide the project with funding for a pole study and a shovel-ready project, which was the layout of the network. The opponents and those who were neither for nor against stated that the municipal water utility does not have experience in providing broadband services. There were questions about the consequences if the broadband efforts are unsuccessful and what the potential cost might be to utility customers. There were concerns raised about unfair competition, overbuilding of networks, cross-subsidization, and then the conditioning of receipt of utility services on the use of the utility-owned broadband. And then it was said the bill could discourage public-private partnerships. The committee had several requests for information that we touch upon. And in looking at the bill itself, we heard from at the public hearing, it appears the proponents do not intend costs attributable to the broadband services to be charged to the water or sewer customers, and that the new charter provisions aren't intended to exempt the district from any applicable laws. To avoid ambiguity, the committee could consider adding language to make that clear. So I've given you some examples. Existing law does prohibit these sort of cross-subsidization, so that may want to be explicit. And while not required by law, changes to district charters are often effective upon voter approval at a referendum. So that's something the committee could look at. I also want to point out that the sponsor had sent around a resolution of the Caribou City Council endorsing the charter amendment for broadband in Caribou. So the committee should have received that by email. In terms of outstanding questions, Representative Grahowski was interested in finding out the perspective of the local Chamber of Commerce with regard to the bill. She'd also asked for information regarding the Telecommunications Association of Maine and their membership, which ones are providing fiber service in Caribou, and Representative Barry was interested in whether Telecommunications Association of Maine members would be able to utilize the utility district's fiber networks. So I believe we should have folks here to answer those questions. But with that, I will stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions for me.
Are there any questions for Lindsay at this point? I don't see any. Why don't we bring over the people? Oops, I'm sorry, Representative Barry, question for Lindsay. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I actually have a motion when that is in order.
Oh, okay. Let's go through first the report backs from the Water District. I think there were some questions directed to them. Is that correct, Lindsay?
The questions were for Ben Lucas, who I believe is here, and also Steve Hudson on behalf of the Telecommunications Association of Maine.
Okay. So if you can bring over Jason, Ben Lucas, and Steve Hudson, and see if they have any reports back to the committee. Ben, since you got here first, you can go first.
Morning. Thank you, Senator Lawrence. I apologize. I got a little sun shadow on my video this morning. To get to Representative Grahowski's question.
If you could start off, Ben, if you could just start off introducing yourself and telling what, if any, organization you're from.
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Ben Lucas. I am here today representing the Maine State Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, go ahead.
So following up on Representative Grahowski's request, I did send an email to the Central Aroostook Chamber of Commerce last night. I have not heard back from them yet. We do weekly policy briefings with some of the local chambers. You can't guarantee that everyone is going to consistently be on those policy briefings. But that's kind of the information that I have. I have not heard from them with any additional information on this bill. And I, looked at their website and social media platforms, and there was nothing either.
Any questions for Ben? Okay, thank you. And then is Steve here? Steve, are you over here?
Yes, Senator Lawrence, I am. I apologize. I'm in a car. I've been traveling most of the day. So I hope you can hear me okay.
We can hear you okay. And if you could just identify yourself and who you're
Yes, I will. Yep. This is, I am Stephen Hudson. I'm an attorney with Freddie Flaherty. I'm here today on behalf of the Telecommunications Association of Maine. And I believe that the question that Senator Grahowski had for us was, what TAM members, if any, serve the Caribou area, and whether any of those members are providing high-speed broadband services. And there are no current members of TAM who serve the Caribou area. So obviously there are none that provide high-speed broadband. And I apologize if there was another part to her question that I may have missed.
Any questions for Steve?
I had a question for him as well.
Okay. Go right ahead, Representative Berry.
Thank you. Mr. Hudson, is there anything that would prevent TAM members from using the fiber to provide service? I believe that is the vision of the broadband district, to allow private providers to use the space.
Yeah, individual providers, yes. Typically, TAM members own the infrastructure that they're providing the services on. There may be instances where there is some leasing going on. I don't know that there is anything that would prevent that. I think TAM's perspective is that this would be best done in the form of a municipal utility district, or in the form of an actual RFP for services that could be provided by private entities. We were very pleased to see the involvement of Caribou involving a private provider in helping study its needs, and we think that was a good way to initiate this process. But our preference is clearly for private companies to be providing these services as much as we can. Thank you.
Any follow-up, Representative Berry?
Well, I guess not a question for Mr. Hudson, but just an observation. I think providing the services is through private providers is what the Caribou local leaders do have in mind. The ownership of the.
Well, let's hold off on the observations and get through any questions for Steve. Are there any questions for Steve?
That was a clarification. That was a clarification of my question, and just wanted to make sure that people understood what my question was, because it seemed like it got a little muddy there. And I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Steve at this point? Okay. Then I think that's all the report back. Representative Berry, you wanted to make a motion?
I do. I would like to just check, Lindsay, we do not have any amendments that have been proposed at this point.
That's correct.
Okay. So my motion is that the bill ought to pass.
Second.
Okay. And I believe it was Representative Ziegler who seconded. So it's been moved ought to pass by Representative Berry, seconded by Representative Ziegler. Is there any debate or discussion? Representative Wadsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know when we're planning on doing morning break, but I was just hoping for a quick caucus on this before we vote.
Okay, so we are at 10:15. So since there's been a caucus request, why don't we break for caucus now and come back at 10:30? We can finish up on this bill. We can start on our language reviews and then break immediately at 11 for the PUC. Representative Berry?
Thank you. I just note that the sponsor's been here waiting patiently since 9 o'clock, and I wondered if we might want to just ask if he would like to comment before we go to break. So I'm sure he
Does
has
he
other
have his
things.
hand up?
He does not. So seeing no hand, perhaps he doesn't need to. It's a good
Okay.
point.
He
Thank
may
you.
be just monitoring at this point.
That may be the case.
Okay, so if you could mute yourself and turn off the video, and Representative Berry, would you please send out a link for Democrats?
Actually, I did just check with the sponsor, and he does have his hand up now. So
Okay. So
yes, I will send a link.
why don't we bring President Jackson over? And in case you weren't listening, President, well, let me get him over here first. Mr. President, we have a motion ought to pass. There's been a request to caucus from the Republicans, and we just wanted to know if you had anything to add before we head into caucus.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I have been listening to the whole thing this morning on Senator Stewart's bill also, and support the concept of that. But while I was listening to Mr. Lucas and Mr. Hudson, I actually called the Central Heuristic Chamber while I was listening to them, and they said they hadn't had any requests. Now, I don't really know what the story is there, but when I said, well, are you supportive of Caribou doing more to try and bring internet to the rural parts of Caribou? They said, well, yes, we're always going to be more supportive of that. So I just don't want it to go unheard or unnoticed that Central Heuristic Chamber supports Caribou getting more broadband across their part of Mercer County. And I do find it kind of, I don't know what the word is. I mean, these people, have gone everywhere they want to in Mercer County, and now Caribou wants to take the bull by the horns and put more broadband for the more rural parts of Caribou, and now they're speaking out against it. I find that very disingenuous.
Any questions for President Jackson before we caucus? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. President. And you will be on, correct, monitoring it when we come back? Good. And we're about after that to go on to St. Francis Water District after that. So if you could turn off your videos and mute your microphone, and we'll be back for caucus. We are back with the Energy Utilities and Technology Committee, and I'm just going to take a brief look at who's come back. Looks like we have everybody back, or 7 back at least. So we were on a motion ought to pass on the Caribou Water District. That's the pending motion on the table. Is there any further debate or discussion on that motion? Yes, Senator Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Just real quick, there's been a lot of back and forth about so I'm a member of the Central Rootstic Chamber, have been for basically since I graduated college. And I just wanted to make sure that what was said and the back and forth here is what's going on, that the chamber is, the local chamber is different than the state chamber. And I just want to clear this up, that there was an attempt to contact them. And in fact, I've got the email right here, and that there was a response, but that the response was that the local chambers don't get politically involved. They do other things, fundraising and the like. They support broadband for businesses. Obviously, that's a part of the role. But as far as they're not taking a political stance as it relates to this municipal project. And so I just want to make sure that the record reflects that, because there's just so much back and forth going on. All that to say, I support this bill. I support the motion. Looking forward to voting for it, and we can move along now that the record is cleared up there.
Great. And I apologize to the utility district. I think I've called you alternatively a sewer district and a water district. So I'll try to just make my references more consistent. Any other debate or discussion on this? So the motion is ought to pass. Looks like the committee's ready for a vote. So Jason, why don't you call the roll?
Okay. Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. Senator Vitelli. Senator Vitelli is not present. Senator Stewart.
Yes.
Senator Stewart is a yes. Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Barry is a yes. Representative Cuddy is not present. Representative Grohowski.
Yes.
Representative Grohowski is a yes. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Kessler is a yes. Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
Representative Ziegler is a yes. Representative Sachs is not here. Representative Wadsworth.
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth is a yes. Representative Grignon, not here. Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Foster is a yes. Representative Carlo.
Yes.
Representative Carlo is a yes. That's 9 in favor of the motion with 4 absent.
Great. So 9 voting in favor, no one voting in opposition, and 4 members being absent. The ought to pass motion prevails. There's no need for a minority report at this point on this one. We'll see how those other 4 weigh in. And just to give Senator Vitelli a little bit of cover, she is on, but she is on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck. So she's unable to join visually to vote. So Lindsay, next we're going on to the St. Francis Water District and language review. Is that correct?
That is correct. So
Okay.
this is LD 1814, an act to repeal the St. Francis Water District Charter and direct the town of St. Francis to assume, maintain, and operate the property of the district. So this bill was heard back on January 6th. The committee had a work session on February 1st and voted ought to pass as amended. And so the amendment instructions basically were to include an emergency preamble and basically look for a way to structure this. The normal process that we see normally with these repeals, it's a 2-step process. The district has to come back after it's wound down its affairs and request a repeal of the charter. So the committee voted to basically build this in so it's a one-step process. And so what happened after the work session, I worked with the district to basically formulate language that lays out the steps that they were intending to take. And we included a provision that will basically make this a one-step process. So I'd like to walk the committee through kind of how this is structured and see if you have any questions and make sure this meets with your expectations.
Right ahead, Lindsay.
Okay, bear with me one moment. Okay, please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay. So we start with, so section 1 of the bill is the repeal provision. So that is going to stay in the bill. We added an emergency preamble. And this is because the town of St. Francis, or the town of St. Francis wanted to do this as a, to basically have a vote on March 28th. So this is coming right up. So in working with the district, their plan is to hold a referendum vote on March 28th. So we've got, and I've highlighted specific, these are not changes that are highlighted. These are things I wanted to flag for the committee's attention. So the amendment repeals section 2 of the bill, which was basically sort of one section that tried to sort of wrap everything up at once. So we keep section 1 that will be a repeal, and that will be triggered at a future date. We replace section 2 with essentially each of these steps that are required for the water district to wind down. So this is the transfer of property, contracts, PUC review. The district had reached out to the Public Utilities Commission and the Maine Rural Water Association to kind of lay out the steps in part. So section 2 of the bill is now the town of St. Francis, the acquisition of the St. Francis Water District. So the town acquires all of the properties, assets, et cetera, of the water district. Consideration for them, basically consideration to be paid for them is the assumption of all of the debts, liabilities, et cetera. Scroll down to section 3. St. Francis Water District is required to sell their property to the town of St. Francis. So to convey all of the property, buildings, et cetera. We put in a date. The transfer in accordance with the section must occur before January 1st, 2024. The intent of the district is to do this as soon as possible. They are not looking to drag this out at all, but we want to put in a date so they will, it will get to, I'll talk about why that date as we get to the piece about the repeal. But basically the intent here is just to say, you've got to do it by a certain date so you can essentially make sure that everything goes according to plan, because if not, then the district can come back to the legislature if something needs to be done, if there's a problem. So the approval will be subject to review by the Public Utilities Commission. Contracts of the St. Francis Water District are assumed by the town. Dissolution and termination of the St. Francis Water District, the pledge of revenues. So all debts, obligations, and other liabilities must be paid in full. And those that haven't been or discharged, the town of St. Francis will be substituted. So that also has to be done prior to January 1st, 2024. So then we get to the referendum provision. So as cited in the preamble, this act will take effect when approved for the purposes of submitting it to the voters. So this is something that was discussed in the work session. The district wanted this to be voted on. So this will be held, this matter will be voted on once approved by the voters. It basically activates the sections except for section 1. So that will now by law allow the district to move forward with the transfer of property, winding down of their operations, the transfer of debts to the extent necessary, PUC review, all of that then gets activated. So this establishes how the election must be called, the question that must be posed. So we get to the provisions of this act other than section 1 take effect for all purposes upon certification of the vote. So again, this is the voters in the district basically saying they want to move forward, making that portion of the law effective. Section 1 of the act takes effect for all purposes 90 days after the adjournment of the second regular session of the 131st Maine Legislature. So what this is doing, normally there wouldn't be a repeal built in, but this is doing this all in one step. So the district basically, we've said by January 1st, 2024, everything should have been wound down at that point. If it hasn't been, the district can come back and say there's a problem here. But assuming everything goes according to plan, at that point, essentially what will be left are the private and special laws governing the water district, but it's going to be a shell. It's, everything will have been transferred over to the town. And then automatically, unless there's some other legislative intervention, Section 1 will be triggered 90 days after the adjournment of the second regular session, and that will be the repeal provision. So what this does is it allows essentially, the Maine Legislature will know when that provision is repealed because we have a fixed date for it. And it's tied to, we tied it to the second regular session because that will give, in the event that the district has any trouble with the winding down, they can come back to the legislature. They'll know by January 1st, 2024, and there would be time if some sort of additional legislative intervention were necessary, there would be time to get that in before the automatic repeal kicks in. But again, in working with the district, their intent is to get everything squared away before then. So this is where we ended up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if you have questions.
Are there questions from the committee for Lindsay? Seeing none, we can go on to debate or discussion or a motion.
This is a language review.
So this,
I'm sorry, you're right. Correct, Nicole. I was incorrect. This is language review. Anyone have concern about this language? Okay, then I think we're all set. Then.
So we will get this moving. Okay, and that's all I had on 1814.
Okay, we're getting close to 11 o'clock. Is the PUC here, Jason?
Deirdre is, but the presenter is not, I don't believe.
Okay, I hesitate to try to open something up and us to get involved and then to have the PUC wait. So, Lindsay?
I do have another language review, which I could do.
I apologize. I forgot that one. Yes.
Oh, yeah, no worries. So bear with me one moment. This one I think will be fairly quick, but I just want to make sure we go through it. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen, please.
We can see it.
Excellent. Okay, so this is, excuse my poor scanning efforts here. This is LD 1847. This is an act to prohibit a public utility from terminating or disconnecting service to a public safety facility without advance notice and approval. So this, we had a majority and minority report on this bill. Both ought to pass as amended. I brought this back to the committee for language review in sort of rougher form. This has now been through the revisor's office, so I figured I would just walk the committee through, make sure there weren't any questions or concerns, and we also have the fiscal note on it.
Is this the majority or the minority report?
This is the majority report to start.
Okay.
This is the majority report. We added an emergency preamble. So do you want me to read through it, all of this as we go?
Unless committee members want you to, I don't see a need to go through that level of detail.
Okay. So I'll just give sort of an overview. If anyone wants me to read something or has questions, let me know. So we added an emergency preamble. And so this gets into, termination, we have a new section, termination of utility services for public safety facilities for non-payment. So a public utility may not terminate or disconnect services unless the public utility has provided written notice and obtained permission from the PUC and the Department of Public Safety. The majority report has a specific penalty provision applicable to violations of this section. So the PUC is required to assess a penalty in an amount between 0.1% and 0.25% of the annual gross revenue of the public utilities sales in Maine. And additional penalties apply if the entity was notified that they were in violation of the statute and that they could be assessed administrative penalties. And then the penalty section refers back to existing law with respect to what considerations the PUC should take into account when determining the penalty amount. The amendment also included the commission shall adopt or amend rules to implement the section. And they shall consult with the Department of Public Safety. So that is the majority report. Let's go to the fiscal note.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead for the fiscal note on the majority report.
Okay, so the fiscal note is potential future revenue increase and minor cost increase. And this is because of the imposition of the administrative penalty. And so that will result in additional other special revenue funds to the PUC, and any additional costs as a result of the rulemaking regarding the disconnect process are anticipated to be minor and can be absorbed within existing budgeted resources.
So any questions from the majority on this language review of the report and the fiscal note? I do not see any. So if I ever miss anybody, just shout out Mr. Chair and I'll recognize you. Let's go on to the minority report.
Excellent. Okay. So the minority report also was to include an emergency preamble. Also, I just wanted to point out a change in the title. So this is an act regarding a public utilities termination or disconnection of service to a public safety facility without advance notice or approval. And that is because the minority report is to direct the commission to adopt rules governing the termination or disconnection of utility services for public safety facility for non-payment of rates, fees, or charges. And the rules must establish a process for these terminations reasonably designed to ensure adequate public safety. Rules are routine technical. And so that was it for the substance. And then we get to the fiscal note. Minor cost increase due to the rulemaking, but it's anticipated to be minor and can be absorbed within the existing budget resources for the PUC.
Great. Any questions from minority on the minority report language review? Great. So we're all set to report those out. Sorry, Representative Berry, were you on the minority or the majority?
On the majority, but I did have a question for Lindsay about the mechanics of the minority report, if I may.
I don't, it's really up to the minority report people how their minority report is structured. So I don't anticipate that any change is going to be made, but if you want to ask your question, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not certainly not my business to change the minority report in any way, but I just wanted to understand if the way that it's drafted now, if public safety facilities could not be disconnected until such time as the rulemaking concluded, the way it's drafted.
I mean, Seth, that's really getting into the debate of the substance of the minority report of what it does. So I would suggest you have this offline. And if you want to debate, if it comes out in the debate on the floor. Right now, we're just going over to make sure the minority members are comfortable with their language.
Thank you, Senator. I'm trying to understand what it does. I'm certainly not debating the matter.
And I'd suggest you do that offline, because our role right now is to get this language review approved by the minority members.
Sure. Yep, don't disagree. And I will be asking Lindsay to clarify that for me, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who's interested, including obviously members of the minority report.
Yep, okay. Any questions from the minority on their language? You're all comfortable with it? Okay, so it looks like that bill is ready to go out. And it looks like your stall tactic worked very, very well, Lindsay. So we're getting up close to 11 o'clock and we're ready for the PUC. Are they here now, Jason?
Yes, they are.
Okay, why don't you beam them all over?
We have Angela Monroe.
And Angela, are you the person who is to start off with us? If you could unmute yourself, Angela.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Are you the MC of this presentation?
I would say I probably am, so yes.
Good, great. And your video is not on. Did you want to put your video on?
Yeah, I do want to put my video on. Let me see if I can start video. Can you see me now?
We can see you now. So you're the master of ceremonies, so you can get us started.
Okay, hi. Good morning, Chairs Lawrence and Chair Barry and the members of the EUT committee. I'm Angela Monroe, Deputy Director of the Electric and Gas Division at the PUC. And I am going to give you a brief presentation on the report regarding rates to support electric vehicle charging. So I have a little PowerPoint, if I can try to share my screen. Can you tell me if you can see that?
Yep, we can see that, Angela.
Okay, great. It's blocking my it's blocking my top things to start it as a slideshow. All right, let's see. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep, no, go ahead.
All right, so I think we've covered much what was on here. So in 2021, the legislature enacted an act to facilitate Maine's climate goals by encouraging use of electric vehicles. And I'm not going to go over all of the details of that. I've listed the section 4, which is really what gives rise to this report here. I would say the sort of important takeaways from this list is that this act was really telling us to look at non-residential applications of EVs and required us to have the T&D utilities submit rate schedules, proposed rate schedules by November 1st, 2021. And then for us to write a report about our findings after we had collected information on that and a number of other things. So the commission opened an investigation in docket 2021-198. And I just wanted to note that in addition, the commission has a number of other rate design issues proceedings going on. So we're not really looking at this in isolation, even though this particular docket is developed around the larger applications, the non-residential applications. And just, there's a lot of information in this report. There's a lot of background information about various things that other entities are doing and background on EVs and so forth, but there's a lot there. So I wasn't really going to go through the whole report, but I just wanted to cover really what's in there so that you're aware, in case you haven't had a chance to go through it in detail, that there's a number of, as I said, background informations and background on the context that T&D utility rate design principles generally should be developed around. There's a summary of state policies regarding EVs, a description of sort of the differences between EV charger levels and usage profiles, a summary of pending commission proceedings that are involving EV programs and rate structures, and then the commission's recommendation with respect to establishing the rate structures to support EV charging for non-residential applications. So the existing EV programs in Maine, I thought you might be interested, that's in the report, but to summarize here, there are several pilots going on right now, still at this moment. CMP has 2 pilots. One is for level 2 charger work, which is referred to as the Make Ready pilot. And they have another pilot that is related to level 3 fast chargers, which you'll see it's called Rate B DCFC, and that is essentially a pilot rate design for level 3 fast chargers. And then EMT has some rebates for level 2 chargers that were developed as part of this proposals that the commission had solicited for EV pilot programs, and those are all underway currently. In addition, EMT, which has been doing a lot of work in the EV area, estimates that there will be 37 million-ish in federal or other external funding that's likely to be available in the near term to support EV charger deployment. And they've probably given you a presentation on that already, but if not, I'm sure you'll have one soon. And so because the focus of this docket and investigation was around the larger projects, I mean the larger vehicles, they've noted in their program that if there's funding that they might develop a pilot program to focus on the transit buses and school buses and medium trucks, and that their very, I think, preliminary estimates are that that would be around $7.8 million. And then there are a number of other local initiatives going on within the state that are listed in more detail in the report itself. So the usage levels and patterns of different types of EV charging turns out important to think about when thinking about how you should design the rates. So we thought it might be helpful, and this is in the report, to give some information on the different levels of chargers and what they're really, how they work, their characteristics as far as their demand on the grid. So the level 1 ones, which are, as I understand it, basically a plug into your wall, they're 110 volts. Those, I don't really think that those are much in use. I think you get the charger with your car, but you can see from the time to charge to go 200 miles here on this grid that it would take you 36 hours. So I don't think those are much in use as far as I'm aware. My understanding is that most residential applications would have the next level up, the level 2, the 220 volts, which is similar to like a dryer outlet in your house. And those cost between $1,000 and $19,000, depending on networking and other considerations, which my understanding is the networking, whether you're trying to network that, is a big factor in where you fall in the range of those costs. That would take, to go 200 miles, that would take you about 7 hours to charge. And the demand is about, just over 7 kilowatts to get the 50 kilowatt hours that you would need to go 200 miles. The level 3 are what we think of as and refer to as the fast chargers, the DC fast chargers. And those are what we talk about when we are talking about like rest areas and places where people just are stopping briefly and need to charge their car. And those you can see to go the same 200 miles. It's about 20 minutes to an hour, depending. They range in voltage. So there can be quite a span of how long it would take, depending on the particular facility that you're using. And I think your car as well, some of the cars are more able to absorb the fast chargers faster than other cars. And that puts a demand of between 50 and 150 kW on the system. And then we included this XFC fast charging technology, which I think there is some very limited deployment of that in some places, perhaps like California now, but I think that's really an emerging technology that isn't ready for prime time, but people are working on it currently. So then, as required by the Act, we had the utilities submit proposals, and by November 1st for proposed rate designs to support the installation and operation of EV charging stations. CMP proposed to expand the availability of its rate B DCFC, which we talked about, or I talked about earlier, which is part of their pilot, which is currently only offered on a limited basis. So they would propose to expand the availability of that. And then for public transit and charging, they had some pretty detailed proposal for that. So I didn't go into the details here, but based on the characteristics of those charging needs, they have some additional proposals that I could get more information if you're interested in the details. Versant's proposal for the commercial and industrial EVs proposes replacing its non-coincident peak charges with coincident peak charges, which, just to give a little more background on the CMP rate B DCFC, that's a combination of charging based on the peak, the coincident peak and the non-coincident peak, which really means your coincident peak is if your demand, you, the user, the EV, puts demand on the system at the very same time that the system is having a peak, that's considered coincident peak, as compared to non-coincident peak is just your peak happens, whatever your peak happened to be when it happened to be. So in conclusion, the commission determined that the rates should reasonably reflect the underlying cost of service applicable to EV charger usage. But of course, rate design is always a matter of judgment about equity of the administrative costs and what billing system changes would have to happen to make it happen. The utilities in not just this docket, but in this docket and in the other rate design dockets have submitted a big suite of rate design options that we're currently working through all of the details of those in several cases. And then the commission recommends ultimately that we should continue working on these, particularly the rate design proceedings, and hope to establish EV rate design principles and rates sometime later this year. And that is what I have. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are questions.
Great. Why don't we go to questions from the committee for the PUC? Representative Barry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angela Monroe, for that presentation and bringing us up to speed on what's been going on at the commission with respect to this important work. I would love to have more detail regarding the different rate designs that you mentioned, and I think it might have been the second to last slide, but it's also challenging for many of us to dig through the very heavy volume of materials that are typically associated with it, with the docket. So if there is something that kind of maps it out in a table or chart in a relatively basic way, that would be super helpful. Just to look a little more at the coincident, non-coincident, commercial, industrial. And is there currently, can you remind the committee, is there currently a residential option for time of use that could be helpful? I think most Mainers are currently and will continue to be charging their EVs at home, whether with a level 1 or level 2, as you mentioned?
So, as I mentioned, in the rate design dockets, we've got proposals for specific, the utilities suggested several different options that for residential EV charging. It currently exists like regular TOU, residential TOU rates available, but they're not really tailored for EV in any way, and probably definitely have not been really examined in any way for determining whether they're appropriate for that use or for other uses, frankly, for some time. So, that's part of what we're undertaking right now is considering that rate design in general and specific to the EVs. So while they can get some differential, between the on-peak and the off-peak with the current time of use, it might not be the right differential.
Great. And if I may, Mr. Chair, a couple other questions.
Go ahead, Representative Barry.
Ms. Monroe, the time of use rates depend on a frequent measurement, and there's sometimes talk about measurement intervals. How frequently you can kind of timestamp usage. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think so. And I think what you're talking about is, for example, you can have your meters set up to read every hour, or you might have them set up to read every 15 minutes, or even maybe every 5 minutes. So I think, that will probably be part of the whole rate design discussion, as to what degree you need to have the precision. And it may differ depending on whether you're talking about a fast charger that happens, over a relatively short period of time. So, if you miss it, you're not going to see it. Now, I think most likely those would also measure, in addition to the kilowatt hours, they would measure the peak. So, I think you probably would know what at least the peak demand was, and I think that would be relatively constant over the charging period. But nonetheless, those are considerations that we will consider in the rate design proceeding as to whether we need more precision on that or not.
Great. And my
Any
last
follow-up?
question.
Yeah,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Yes, my last question pertains to sort of what you see as the likely, CapEx to OpEx ratio with this work. The make-ready work, is that capital expenditures or is that primarily O&M? And then in addition, on the same point, would, for example, 15-minute increments, would that require meter replacement, which is obviously a significant CapEx cost, or computer replacement?
Yeah, those are all good questions. The capability of the meters to do, and it's not just the meters. I mean, you've got the meters on the one side and you've got the billing system on the other side. So both have to be able to function in order to do whatever specific rate design that you might want to offer. And my understanding is that currently for a CMP, its billing system can't really manage different hours than they have for the time of use, but that they have estimates of what it would take to reprogram that. So I think it's under consideration exactly what you're asking about. Does the dollars that it would take to do that work, is it important to do that in order to send a different price signal? And I think those questions have yet to be answered, because there's other considerations, such as if you're talking about residential customers and you have this massively complex rate, it might be more than anybody can manage or wants to manage. So it might be that you would opt for a more simplistic rate design that wouldn't require much reprogramming of systems. on the other hand, if you determine that it's really important to send a very precise price signal, then you would probably determine that the value was there to do the reprogramming, and that people, either their cars could already, maybe they can program their cars to manage it, so they don't really need to not be confused. But those are all good questions that are under consideration.
Got it. So just to clarify, Mr. Chair, with your permission, the make-ready work for the level 2 chargers that you referenced in your presentation, that is, can you speak to whether that's primarily CapEx, primarily OpEx?
Yeah, I
O&M?
think that's primarily CapEx, the make-ready stuff.
It is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so.
Got it.
I mean, my understanding, and again, I could follow up and get more details on exactly what they're looking at, but my understanding is it's all the work that has to happen to be able to put in a charger in certain places. And I think it was marketed in, the pilot was marketed along with an EMT program that was giving rebates. So I think that there may be places that it makes sense to put a level 2 charger that would take, for example, less capital investment to do that than another place. And I think that whole pilot was trying to work in conjunction to get some projects out there and pay for the make-ready costs associated with the places where it made sense from a logical point of view, from where you needed a charger, but also wasn't like the most expensive place on the system to do it. And I think those costs vary depending on what equipment is already available at that location, and or whether you need networking cost, because the networking, I think, can sometimes be a big piece of the make-ready if you need networking.
Thank you.
Are you all set, Representative Berry? Okay. Any other questions from members of the committee? Angela, did you have anybody else from the PUC who may want to speak on this, or are you all set?
I think we're all set. As far as if there's somebody else, they didn't make me aware of it, so I think we're all set.
Okay, great. Thank you, and thank you for coming.
All right, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So, Lindsay, back to our work. I think we have one bill that may be ready to be worked if we want to go back into work session. And Nathan, I'll just check with you. I think it's 1202. Do you have some language that you may be able to share with us at this point? Assuming Nathan's still there. He's probably stepped off to something else. I know you can't share it with us, Lindsay, but am I wrong in assuming we may have something to go over on 1202?
Well,
did I get the LD number wrong? This is the
no, this is the
CHP
combined heat and power program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. If so, I'd sent out a sponsor amendment.
Okay.
And so I believe this was tabled. Yes, this was tabled.
Yep. It
at
was
the work
tabled.
session.
And so was this an update to the sponsor amendment since we tabled it?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not been authorized or
Okay.
received anything from the sponsor.
Okay.
Of this.
Okay. I was just checking back in because I thought Nicole and Nathan had told me that they had talked about this. Nathan's back. So to give you a chance and not to put you on the spot, Nathan, but do you have anything to report back to us on 1202, the CHP program, and where it's kind of at?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I definitely appreciate that Rep. Grahowski reached out with some of her concerns of the bill. And so I put her in contact directly with Pat Strauch of the Maine Force Prox Council. And so they've been talking over a few of the concerns. I believe they've made some headway, but I haven't seen anything like final,
Okay.
hey, we're ready to go with this. But I mean, my goal would be to have something, if we can get somewhere ready on Tuesday. So
Okay.
I don't want to let it linger either.
Okay, that's great. And I think Nicole had to step off for a different hearing, so I don't think we're ready to go with that yet then. Is there anything else that committee members have for us to work on, or Lindsay, that you have for us to work on?
Yes. So I figured maybe, there was going to be some discussion of committee bills.
Yes, we do have that. Was that what you were raising your hand about, Representative Barry?
That is correct.
Okay. So, and Chris Kessler, was that what you were raising your hand about? Chris?
Yes.
I assume so.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. We need it audio because not everybody who will be reviewing this tape, and we know there'll be many millions of people reviewing it, will have video. So we need to have people give verbal responses too. Why don't we do that? Why don't we go over, I think you had mentioned, Lindsay, there are 3 potential bills. So I'll let you choose which one's going to be the easiest for us to deal with first.
Well, I'll start with the one that I've got first. How about that?
Right.
So I sent out draft language on 2 of them. So let's start with, this is Representative Kessler's. I will share my screen. I will try to share my screen. There we go. Okay, so this is a potential committee bill. This is pursuant to Resolve 2021, Chapter 63, which was LD 1666. And what this resolve would do is direct the governor's energy office to monitor efforts undertaken in other states to improve energy use data standards and to implement multi-use online energy data platforms. This was in connection with one of the recommendations out of the report that was submitted in connection with LD 1666. The governor's energy office would then submit a report on or before February 1st, 2023 to the EUT committee, or excuse me, the committee having jurisdiction over utilities and energy matters. And then the committee would have the authority to report out legislation. Section 2 of the resolve would require the Public Utilities Commission to issue another request for information on whether the utility has the present ability to map specific meters, map specific meters to specific buildings. And if they do not have the ability, a description of the process that would be necessary to get there and what the cost would be to ratepayers. To find out whether a utility has the present ability to export energy data in the Green Button Alliance format and support the Green Button Connect My Data standard and the energy service provider interface of the North American Energy Standards Board. And if the utility doesn't have the present ability to do that, a description of the process is necessary and the cost to ratepayers. So then the PUC would report back to the committee, and they would have the authority to report out legislation.
Great. So to go over with the committee where we're at, and I think I will have to have a motion if we're going to report something out to go back into work session. So where we're at is the ability to report out a bill back to the legislature to then be referred to a committee. So in order for us to do that, we have to have a vote, not on the substance of the bill, but whether or not to report out this bill, which would be then referred back to us. We're trying to get all these bills out today because they would need to be referred on Wednesday, next Wednesday, back to us, so that we could then hold a public hearing and a work session on them. So I'd like to have Chris answer any questions or anything on what he's proposing us reporting out and why we should be reporting it out. And we can then have a vote. But first, before we do that, I'd like a motion to go back into work session.
So
Moved by Representative Barry. If you could just do it verbally to Representative Barry, because this is an audio recording too as well.
Yes, I move that we go back into work session.
Is there a second to that?
Second,
Seconded by Representative Ziegler. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, so the motion prevails. We're back into work session. So I think now would be appropriate to have a motion to report out this legislation, and then we can have a debate or discussion on it, on
So moved.
reporting out. So I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Was that a motion?
I said so moved, yes.
So Representative Barry moves that we report out this piece of legislation. Is there a second?
So second.
there you go.
Seconded by Representative Kessler. Debate or discussion? Are we all ready for a vote? So I'm going to have a formal vote on this and just ask Jason to call the roll.
Okay, Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. Senator Vitelli.
Yes.
Senator Vitelli is a yes. Senator Stewart. Not present. Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Barry is a yes. Representative Cuddy. Not present. Representative Grahowski. Not present. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Kessler is a yes. Representative Ziegler.
Yes,
Representative Ziegler is a yes. Representative Sachs is not present. Representative Wadsworth.
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth is a yes. Representative Grignon, not present. Representative Foster.
No.
Representative Foster is a no. Representative Carlo.
Yes.
Representative Carlo is a yes. It's 7 in favor of the motion and 1 opposed.
Okay, 7 in favor and 1 opposed. The motion prevails. I don't believe Representative Foster does a minority report on this. It's just simply a vote not to pass it out. And you can make your report be, I want to go home, but that's fine. Okay, so that bill will be reported out and then go for reference to the legislature, hopefully on Wednesday. And Lindsay, the next one you have language on.
Certainly. Okay. Bear with me one moment. Okay. Next up is another resolve. This would be pursuant to PL 2021, Chapter 29. This relates to development of legislation to implement the crisis response services recommendations identified in the Public Utilities Commission report that was submitted to the committee. So the resolve would require that the Public Utilities Commission, Emergency Service Communication Bureau, in consultation with Department of Public Safety, shall develop proposed legislation to implement the protocol and procedure recommendations for the delivery of crisis response services under the E911 system as identified in the report. The proposed legislation would be submitted to persons and entities affected by the proposal and allow for a comment period. And then the commission would report back to the committee, and the committee may report out related legislation in the 131st legislature.
Okay, any questions for Lindsay technically about what that resolve does? Representative Barry?
Thank you. Not a question exactly, but I I just want to flag that this approach of a resolve with a report back from the PUC would delay our ability for public safety answering points to have the capacity to address mental health crisis over the course of the next year. And I think we all are keenly aware that we're in a mental health pandemic, and that there are a lot of needs out there right now that we'd like to respond to sooner if possible. So Representative Grahowski has asked me to share that she will be working with the sponsor of the bill that led to this report, Representative Morales, over this weekend to try to and work with the PUC as well to come up with some more specific language that might do more than this resolve contemplates. That might actually get something in place sooner. I think our bill last year authorized the PUC to put forward language, but they chose not to do that in their report back. So that's what kind of led to where we are with this. So what I want to suggest in order to kind of give the committee some flexibility is that we simply make the language that Lindsay has put forward into an act rather than a resolve. And that will give us flexibility to actually do something. If it's a resolve, it can't be turned into an act. We can't make that vehicle into something that happens right away. So just in the interest of, again, giving the committee some flexibility once it is reported back, I'd like to add to this an allocation section. I don't remember the figure, Lindsay, that the PUC referenced, but it was, they gave us a number for what the protocol would cost. And I would suggest that we just, bookmark that number. That would, I think, be enough to make it an act. And when the bill comes back to us, we can look at what is best at that time.
So, Lindsay, who is the person who is proposing this resolve?
This resolve came about, Representative Grahowski had brought this up on Tuesday when we talked about it, and Representative Berry, I know, was interested in pursuing this as well. So
okay, so you got this language from Representative Grahowski, correct?
Representative Berry in conjunction with the PUC.
So Representative Berry is the one proposing this resolve. You're saying you would now like it turned into an act?
That's right. The PUC, and just to be, just so I don't want to take.
Well, let me get a motion first.
Okay. Yep.
So let's get a motion and then we can debate or discuss it.
Great.
So who wants to make a motion? Go ahead, speak up. Okay.
Thanks.
So Representative Berry, what is your motion?
My motion is to move forward with a committee bill, not a resolve, that is essentially the language that Lindsay has showed us, plus an allocation section.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
And that was Representative Kessler? Correct. So seconded by Representative Kessler. So we can have debate or discussion on this. So anybody who wants to go ahead and ask any questions, debate, or discussion about reporting this out? I do have one question, Lindsay. So if it comes back to us as an act, if we then decided to turn it into a resolve, could we do that? I remember we can go one way, but not the other. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So which is the way we can go and which is the way we cannot go?
If you go with an act, you can reduce, I shouldn't say reduce, you can change it to a resolve. If you go with a resolve, you cannot turn it into an act.
Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. And so that would be one of my arguments in support of Representative Berry's motion, is that we make it an act. If we get back, we find out it should be a resolve, then we can change it back. But that gives us more flexibility. Any other debate or discussion? Representative Berry?
I just also want to share that the language in the resolve came from the Public Utilities Commission at my request. What would be a way to carry the work of this resolve of this report forward? So that's where the language originated.
Great. Any other debate or discussion on this? I do not see any, so I'm assuming we're ready to vote. So Jason, why don't you call the roll?
Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. Senator Vitale.
Yes.
Senator Vitale is a yes. Senator Stewart. Not present. Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Berry is a yes. Representative Cuddy. Not present. Representative Grahowski. Not present. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Ziegler,
Yes.
Representative Kessler is a yes. Representative Ziegler is a yes. Representative Sachs. Representative Sachs is not present. Representative Wadsworth.
No.
Representative Wadsworth is a no. Representative Grignon is not present. Representative Foster.
No.
Representative Foster is a no. Representative Carlo. I'm sorry, Representative Carlo.
No.
Representative Carlo is a no. That is 5 in favor and 3 opposed.
Okay,
5
5
absent.
members voting in favor, 3 being opposed, and 5 being absent. The motion prevails. So we've got one more, I think, to discuss. I don't think we have language on it yet. Is that correct, Lindsay?
We do have language as of just this moment. I sent it out to the committee. So
That is extremely exciting. So why
Getting
don't
there.
you share your screen and we can start looking at that language.
Okay. I just shared my screen. So this is another potential committee bill. The authority for this would be coming from the Governor's Energy Office annual report that comes in. So the title of this would be an act to update the comprehensive state energy plan to achieve the state energy vision. This is very specific, so I'm going to walk right through it. So this relates to the state energy plan. The Governor's Energy Office must establish a comprehensive state energy plan that includes measurable goals and report on the state's progress toward meeting the plan's goals in accordance with this paragraph. So in consultation with the Efficiency Maine Trust Board, the director shall prepare and submit to the governor and the Joint Standing Committee of the Legislature having jurisdiction over energy and utility matters by January 15th, 2024, a comprehensive state energy plan. And by January 15th of every even-numbered year thereafter, an updated plan. So the plan must include specific goals and strategies to achieve the state energy vision, which is established in the different subsection, which we will get to. The plan must include specific 2-year, 10-year, and 30-year goals and recommend strategies to achieve these goals. Must include benchmarks by which progress toward the goals, as identified above, will be measured. Must describe in detail alternative pathways considered in developing the goals and strategies included in the state energy plan. For each alternative pathway considered, the report must include the economic modeling applied to that alternative, contingencies considered in the modeling, and must include a description of how the consideration of the alternative pathways inform the goals and strategies included in the energy plan. Beginning in 2026, each updated plan, as required above, must include a discussion of the state's progress toward achieving the goals of the plan, including specific measurements of success or failure with respect to each benchmark established in the plan. If an updated plan includes changes to the goals or strategies of the state energy plan, the director shall, before finalizing the updated plan, offer to provide a detailed briefing of those changes to the committee, and at the request of the committee shall provide such a briefing and opportunity for input. Any changes in the benchmarks or methodologies for measuring success included in any updated plan must be identified in the updated plan and must be designed to maintain and promote the maximum possible consistency in order to ensure accountability, transparency, and public understanding. The plan must include an explanation of the nature of each change and how the change ensures such consistency. The plan may include additional benchmarks or methodologies to reflect any changes to the goals and strategies of the plan. After a review of any state energy plan submitted under this paragraph, the committee may report out a bill related to the plan. And this establishes a new subsection, the state energy vision. So in carrying out its duties under this section, including when they're developing a state energy plan, the Governor's Energy Office shall seek to achieve the following goals referred to in this section as the state energy vision. So that means the total energy costs for the average household in the state should be no higher than for the average household in the United States, and the average energy cost for residents and businesses in the state should decline over time. Energy spending in this state should be directed where feasible to economic activity that produces short-term and long-term jobs and increases overall state gross domestic product. Greenhouse gas emission reductions governed by Title 38, Section 576A that are produced by energy use or production should be reduced through measures that address both energy consumption and production. State energy policies should improve the state's air, soil, and water quality, and in a manner that does not cause undue environmental or economic harm to other states or regions. On average, household energy costs in this state as a portion of household income should be equitable across all income levels. Average interruptions of energy supply and delivery in the state should be no longer in duration and no more frequent than the average such interruptions among the other states in the United States, and the frequency and duration of the interruption should decrease over time. Energy supply and delivery systems sufficient to meet basic needs should be available to all residents of the state and capable of functioning independently of regular supply and delivery systems for prolonged periods during likely and foreseeable extreme weather events. And all energy supply and delivery disruptions that may be reasonably anticipated, including those that could be caused intentionally by a malicious actor, should be prevented or minimized, and critical energy infrastructure should be protected from ownership or control that is adverse to the interests of consumers. I will stop sharing my screen and see if you have any questions.
Great. Are there questions from the committee? Okay, I'm sorry, Representative Barry.
I'll defer to Representative Foster. I think he saw his hand there a minute ago.
Representative Foster, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Berry, for yielding. I'm just curious if we could find out from Representative Berry. I think it was mentioned, but more specifically, what entities, state or otherwise, were consulted with in putting this together. Thank you.
Representative Berry.
Thank you. So the Governor's Energy Office has a copy of it, and obviously they would be responsible for carrying this work forward. I have not yet heard back from them, but I think they did have some comments and suggestions they wanted to make. I will also flag that the Republican lead on the committee, Representative Wadsworth, has had this language and for some time, and this comes out of the work actually that we began together on mic in our off-session work back in November and December. We looked at a list, affordability, reliability, and I did put affordability first because I understood that to be a concern for some of the members of the committee. So this is really just an outgrowth of that work. And I think all the stakeholders, all the interested parties that were following our off-session meeting were aware. But until it becomes a bill and we have a hearing, I don't think there's sort of the immediacy to give input. So I really would like to see, what all stakeholders have to say, the public advocate, the PUC, the GEO. And I think, that's exactly why we need to just have a hearing on the language. But, I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Obviously, what we have now for a state energy plan requirement in law is not working. It's been many, many years since we actually had a plan submitted. So I'd like to put something in statute that is meaningful and that does result in an actual plan.
Representative Foster, does that answer your question about what agencies were consulted?
I think it does. It doesn't sound like some of those that I would think we need to consult have been. There are some issues in this that I have with it that I think others might have as well. So, but I appreciate the amount of time and effort that Representative Berry put into this, and thank him for that.
Okay, we need a motion. Representative Berry.
Thank you. Before making a motion, I just want to appreciate Representative Foster's remark. I think that's exactly why we do need to get input from all parties, before we go forward. And, perhaps we'll also see an energy plan. I think we tentatively have a calendar item for a presentation or an update about the the previous plan. So I hope that maybe those things could even coincide somewhat and really get all eyes on this. So with that said, I move that we go forward with a committee bill and seek to improve this language through an actual public hearing.
So Representative Berry has to move to report out a bill based upon the language we've reviewed. Is there a second to that?
Second that.
And that was Representative Kessler. So moved by Representative Berry, seconded by Representative Kessler. Debate or discussion? Seeing none, we'll go straight into the vote. Jason, go ahead.
Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. Senator Vitelli.
Yes.
Senator Vitelli is a yes. Senator Stewart. Not present. Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Berry is a yes. Representative Cuddy. Not present. Representative Grahowski. Not present. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Kessler is a yes. Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
Representative Ziegler is a yes. Representative Sachs is not present. Representative Wadsworth.
No.
Representative Wadsworth is a no. Representative Grignon, not present. Representative Foster.
No.
Representative Foster is a no. Representative Carlo.
No.
Representative Carlo is a no. That's 5 in favor of the motion and 3 opposed, 5 absent.
Okay. 5 members being in favor, 3 members being opposed, and 5 members being absent. The motion prevails. I believe that's it, Lindsay, on all the people who have contacted you regarding reporting out legislation. Is that correct?
That is correct. One thing I did want to add, so the as a result of this, we'll move forward with the process. Hopefully this can get on the calendar for Wednesday, but I just wanted to reiterate there are no guarantees. We'll do our best. And I also, on the crisis response system, the allocation section, do you have a sense of what you wanted that to look like?
Representative Berry?
Yes, I do. The amount from the PUC that they had given us during the report, and that Maria Jakes from the PUC would be the right person to provide that information.
Okay, I can see in the report, it cites total first year costs are approximately 263,000. Is that what you're getting?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else on these 3, Lindsay, that you need from us?
I don't believe so. The only thing I will say is I don't actually know if the allocation section alone is enough to make it an act. I defer, the chairs have more experience in this than I do. So if there are any issues with that, I will let you know immediately, but I will have to check.
Okay. Representative Berry?
Thank you. To the extent that it may be helpful to, carry out the will of the majority and wanting to make this an act, I do think that the intent here is to actually require that the PUC go forward and spend that money as they envision in the report. So if you need to clarify that, and I'd look to others who voted to see if they disagree with that characterization. But I think that was our intent, that they actually spend the money and do what is described in the report. Seems to me that might be helpful in ensuring that it is an act. I would hope so. But maybe
I think we can leave it. Lindsay, if you have any issues, just work with Representative Berry to make it an act, because that was the intent of the committee, that we report out an act.
Right.
Thank you.
Or the majority of the committee, I should say. Okay, Lindsay, do we have anything else we need to do today?
I believe that is it.
Okay. I appreciate every member of the committee who has hung out with us to give us a quorum. That was very helpful. We've got some work done today, which is good. And we'll be back on Tuesday Is it public hearings on Tuesday, I believe, or is it work sessions, Lindsay?
We have 2 public hearings scheduled for Tuesday morning. We will also have some work sessions. I haven't,
Yep.
the schedule still has not gone out yet, so I'll be working
Okay.
with Jason on getting that out.
And I think all committee members should consider that every day from now on is going to be a work session. So every day we're meeting, we're going to be working on bills. And I think Nathan has said he believes he can get us back 12:02 on Tuesday. So we should plan on that being there, and anything else we can work on Tuesday, we will begin working. Representative Barry.
Thank you. And Senator Lawrence, I think just as you were logging on this morning while we were chatting, those of us who were there a little early, we spoke about the session dates scheduled for I think it's the second or third week of March 15th and 17th specifically, there are session dates. So since those are traditionally committee days, if we do meet during that week or any subsequent weeks, obviously we will need to work around those session days, and that could mean, Senator Lawrence, I'd look to you for confirmation, but I think folks, should be aware that could mean potentially meeting on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, if need be.
I think we're authorized now for Wednesday. Is that correct, Lindsay? I think we would need authorization for other days, but we should also expect that if we're meeting on a session day on a Tuesday and session ends at 11 or 12 or even 1 o'clock, we should probably plan on having a work session thereafter. And you and I should talk about the logistics, Representative Barry, because that would mean we were in the committee room at that time. So, Lindsay?
Just one thing I wanted to clarify. Committees may meet on additional days that are not authorized as committee days without
we did get
prior approval.
Okay. Thank you. So we did get permission. So Representative Foster?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a photo of my grandkids in Augusta schools this morning, apparently attending without masks. So if we could find out if us adults in the committee room will have to wear masks, that would be greatly appreciated. I assume we won't have to. Thank you.
That would be good. So we'll try to figure out all those logistics and let you know as we go. You'll probably find out, Representative Foster, whether or not on the session days, if we're required to wear masks during session. My guess is if we're required to wear masks during session, then we'll also be required to wear them in committee. And Skeet is in agreement on that. So I think he concurs with the policy. And I just want to let people know that I may be raising my hand in the future, wearing my Skeet scratching glove. So it's become his favorite thing for me to scratch his ears while we're in session. Anything else to come before the committee? Okay, see you guys on Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.